Hello, friends at home. Everyone say hello to your friends at home. Excellent. So today we are going to be looking at more of our constitutional underpinnings. We are going to move into federalism. Therefore, because we are moving along in this unit, we're going to take a quiz on Wednesday. It's going to be an online quiz. Therefore, people at home and people in school will be able to access it the same way. You'll have a timed quiz in class. And the same will apply for the people at home. Because we cannot control the people at home, and the access that they have to notes, your quiz will be open note. But I'm telling you, you're not going to want to spend that much time in your copybook. You're going to want to move, right? So that might work for one thing, and you're like, oh, okay, wait 1 second, and you're going through your notes, and you're like, okay. You need to know all that information because it's not just knowing the information, it's being able to apply it to certain situations. So if we look at a Supreme Court decision, and then they ask you to analyze how is, Marbury versus Madison similar to, Matt versus Ohio or something like that, right? They'll give you the information for the new case, but you have to already know the old case in order to understand the new case. Does that make sense, guys? So at that point, your copybook wouldn't help you because you would have to understand what both mean.
Do we have the whole class?
Yes. The whole class. So let's go back. We were talking about the legislative branch when my computer shut down, which is great. Congress is made up of two houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives. The Senate has two members per state, and this satisfied smaller states when the Constitution was being created. Smaller states like New Jersey, and then larger states like Virginia wanted a house to be based on population, and so therefore the House of Representatives, membership in the House of Representatives is determined by population. So both states were satisfied in our current form of government. Just loading, so give it a second. All right. The enumerated powers of the Constitution, again, these are the powers that are listed in the Constitution. In Section 8, we find the necessary and proper clause. This is also known as the elastic clause because it stretches the power of the federal government. It also makes the federal government, and the Constitution more flexible, meaning, again, that it can stretch, they can bend it certain ways, right, in order to get certain jobs done. Section 9 tells us what Congress can't do. Section 10 tells us what the states cannot do. And this is all of Article 1 of the Constitution. We already looked at this. We looked at this. Did you get this? You got this. Article 2 is your executive branch. So these kind of give you a couple requirements in order to run for president. And then it gives you some of the responsibilities of the president, such as his role as commander-in-chief of the military and his role as head of the state. We got here? Okay. Judicial branch. The framers only ever mentioned the Supreme Court. They didn't mention the lower courts. However, they empowered Congress to create lower courts. President appoints the Supreme Court, and the federal justices have to approve of this appointment. They give their advice and consent to the president. And they serve life terms because if you are someone who has to get elected for your position, you might have to listen to certain people who have large amounts of money, or you might rule a certain way in order to get reelected. So the key here is that they serve life terms so that they can't be influenced by outside factors. They are just looking at the law. Okay, that's to make sure that they're honest and that their sole responsibility is just applying the Constitution. Article 4, this defines the relationships between the states, meaning it's the full faith and credit clause. If you have an asthma attack in New Jersey, they still have to send an ambulance to help you, even though you don't pay taxpayer dollars in New Jersey. You get the full privileges and amenities of other states, even though you're not a citizen there. The full faith and credit clause also requires that states honor the contracts and licenses of other states. So therefore, if you are driving your car from Pennsylvania to New Jersey, you don't get pulled over in New Jersey because you don't have a New Jersey license. Your Pennsylvania license is valid throughout the 50 states because it was issued to you in Pennsylvania where you are a licensed driver. We're okay still? Okay. And also, this does address the extradition process for fugitives who have committed state crimes. If somebody is wanted in Delaware and they show up in Philadelphia, Philadelphia police can arrest them and send them back to Delaware. Article 5, this is what we looked at last, defines the amendment process. There are two ways to amend the Constitution. There are two ways to amend it and two ways to ratify it, meaning there are two ways to propose it and there are two ways to ratify it. To ratify means to pass. Are we okay? Do we want a little bit more clarification on that, or are we good? I think I'm gonna just clarify the one last part because it was towards the end of class, and I wanna make sure that everybody got it. I love how I ask you guys, and I'm like, this is what I got. Where is it at? There's a really good graphic in this book. There it is. All right, yep, so basically what we said was, oh wait, go ahead. Okay, so first way to propose an amendment is for 2/3 of each House of Congress to approve it. And then the other way is by national convention. Basically, Congress calls for a national convention, but, I didn't mean to do that. And then amendments can be ratified by 3/4 of the houses of Congress agreeing, or by 3/4 of the states agreeing. Okay, those are the two ways, and we talked about that on Friday. Now, this is probably like my favorite one, my favorite article, because apparently I have a favorite article. But Article 6, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And to avoid the lack of unification experienced under the Articles of Confederation, and to unite the nation under stronger national policy, they decided to go ahead and create the Supremacy Clause. And the Supremacy Clause declares that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Basically, the Supremacy Clause basically just reminds us that in this situation, the national government is the overarching authority. It comes down to them. So basically, it's like, who's in charge, really, the states or the national government? Under the Articles of Confederation, we were in a confederal system where the national government got all of the power from the states, and the states are in charge. Instead, now we're in a federal system. There's a sharing of power, however, the national laws come before the state laws. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And so we're going to see a court case where that kind of gets questioned, but the Constitution obviously comes first because it's more powerful than the state governments. And basically this rule, guys, this also it doesn't stretch, but it reinforces the power of the national government. This law or this clause basically just tells us that the national government is more powerful than the states. For example, if Pennsylvania tries to decide that they're going to start printing money, if just the state of Pennsylvania decides that they are going to print money, Governor Wolf decides that he's going to create wolf dollars, right? He cannot do that because that is a power that is explicitly stated in the Constitution. That is a power of the legislative branch. The legislative branch of Congress is part of the federal government. Governor Wolf cannot make his own money because that is a power delegated to the federal government, right? So if Governor Wolf says, well, why can't I do that? They would say because that law is stated in the Constitution, and the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. With this being said, girls, when every state has its own constitution, and every state, their constitution is valid, and it will supersede the national government as long as it doesn't violate a law previously stated in the Constitution. So, for example, Pennsylvania says, we're going to have a closed primary election, which we do. We have a closed primary election where you can only vote for your party in the primary. We're going to get into that. But that's an election law in Pennsylvania because states are allowed to make their own election laws. Now, if Governor Wolf said, and we're also going to ban anybody from saying that the Eagles stink. No one in the state of Pennsylvania is allowed to say, I hate the Philadelphia Eagles or the Eagles are terrible. The state can't pass this law. Why can't the state pass this law?
Because we have the freedom of speech.
We have the freedom of speech, which is already mentioned in the Bill of Rights. If you were to say, hey, why can't I pass that law? I'm the governor of my own state, and our state is, our state has rights that can't be violated too. You would say that right is granted to the people in the Constitution. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. That's why you can't coin money, you can't declare war, things like that. It's all powers that are given to the federal government through the Constitution, and that's reaffirmed by this clause. The clause of supremacy, that the national government comes first. Make sense? Cool. This is great. Why does it keep clicking me? Okay, again, girls, this is how the Constitution can be amended. Phase one is proposing the amendment. How are you going to propose it? There are two ways. You can propose the amendment with a 2/3 vote in each house, meaning that, yeah, they want to see this go through. Or you can do it by national convention where an amendment can be requested by 2/3 of the states. So if 2/3 of the states are like, oh, maybe we should do this, then it can be proposed. This was used, okay, so this is really the only way that we make amendments to the Constitution. We've never really used this one. This avenue was used, and by this avenue, I mean this avenue, Congress, the first one. Congress can propose an amendment by 2/3 vote in each house. This one was used for every amendment that was adopted except for the 21st Amendment. And then if you look down here, okay, you'll see that the 21st Amendment repealed prohibition, which was the banning of the selling, consumption, and distribution of alcohol in the states. You remember that because you think 21, you have to be 21 years old to drink. So that's how you remember that amendment. And then you look here, state conventions can ratify it or state legislatures can ratify it. Some informal changes to the Constitution. We have a two-party system. What else? We have, we protect people's privacy with the Constitution. What else? We have the Electoral College. That's how we elect our president, the Electoral College system. And then the president and domestic policy. These are just little changes that we've made along the way that are kind of informal. But like, for example, here, the president can have domestic policies. He can talk to Congress and be like, hey, this is something I'm thinking about. Do you think that maybe this is something that we can enact for our, because domestic means within the United States, right? Like at home. Think about at home being like our home country. Go ahead, Mina.
What's the two-party system?
Yes, so the two-party system pretty much is just like Republican, Democrat. We've noticed throughout the years that of all the parties that have come and gone in the United States, the Republican and the Democratic Party seem to be the one that's that last. And this two-party system goes up against each other for election every year. You nominate a candidate, that candidate either gets pushed through or does not get pushed through as the nominee. The nominee then runs for president in the general election. We have a two-party system, meaning two parties pretty much go up against each other for elections. Any questions? Yeah, two parties are competing for control of the government. You guys warm? Ollie?
When is election day?
November 3rd. Election day is like my Christmas. It's my favorite day.
It's soon.
It's very soon. It's so exciting. When I was in college, I worked with every campaign.
Are they still doing the debates?
The debates. I don't know.
They kind of said.
I'll have to check. Did anybody watch the VP debate? That was awesome. That was so much better than the first one.
The which one?
The vice presidential
Oh,
debate.
yeah.
So much better than the first one.
Was that the
The
one?
fly in his hair.
Yeah.
Such a sin. Such a sin. Could you imagine if you're on national TV and you're that serious, there's a fly in your hair? That's so sad.
No,
You have to feel bad for him.
I saw this thing, and it was like, at the last debate with Hillary Clinton and Trump, there was a fly that landed on Hillary,
Ooh.
Ooh.
and someone was like, maybe that's.
It's a mechanical spying fly.
Yeah, maybe the fly chooses who wins them.
Next, we have a Bill of Rights. Don't write this down. The Bill of Rights is so accessible to you in so many ways. Do not write this down. But check this out. So, the Bill of Rights, so those who fought for our independence argued that a Bill of Rights was necessary to secure liberties that were earned through the Revolution. We earned these liberties when we fought Great Britain and gained independence. These are the things that we are fighting for. Initially, our Constitution, our Articles of Confederation, lacked a guarantee of free speech in Congress. There was no protections against aggressive prosecution, and there was no promise against cruel and unusual punishment. So basically, under the Articles of Confederation, none of your rights were secured. You could go to jail for however many years people saw fit. There was no promise against cruel and unusual punishment either. So James Madison feared that minorities who suffered at the will of majorities. And this Bill of Rights that ended up securing these liberties for us was fully ratified by 1791. So certain freedoms or rights that we have that are listed in the Bill of Rights. Now, you hear Bill of Rights and you immediately know that it's the Constitution and it gives us rights. But if you look at it, it's quite literally a Bill of Rights, a proposed law that gives us all of our rights. Amendment number 1, this is the one that you guys are most familiar with. It guarantees your freedom of religion, speech, press, assembly, petition. So you can practice whatever religion you want. You can say whatever you want as long as it doesn't incite danger. So you can't say that you're going to kill somebody and then expect not to go to jail for conspiracy to commit murder, right? Press is pretty much just like your media outlets. You can, type up your common sense. You can type up your Federalist Papers. That's freedom of the press. Going to journalists and getting stories published, whatnot. Assembly is getting together. This could be for a protest. This could be for a strike. This is your right to assemble. And then petition, meaning you can get people to sign a document in order to make change in the government. Have you guys ever heard of the petition that floats around? You know, petition to wear ankle socks, and then you guys get to wear your socks. If you petition, if you get people to sign a paper to show support for a specific cause. Next up, we have the Second Amendment. This is the right to bear arms or to own guns. This is a highly debated amendment in today's political climate. Amendment 3, that the government cannot force U.S. citizens to shelter soldiers in their homes. During the right before the Revolutionary War, the British were sending troops to live, in the colonies. So basically, the troops were living in Massachusetts to keep the people of Massachusetts oppressed and keep them, at just to monitor them and keep them in line. But the troops also were forced to live with the people. The people had to house them, feed them, right? So that's against the law. Amendment 4, U.S. citizens are protected from unreasonable searches of a person's property. If you're walking down the street with all of your friends, a police officer cannot just say, hey, you, open up your bag. In order to search a person or their bag or their car, a police officer either needs a warrant or probable cause. So if a police officer is walking down the street and thinks that for whatever reason he has to enter someone's home, a police officer is not allowed to just invite himself into your home. He needs probable cause to enter your home. So if someone is screaming, if someone is saying, help me, if he sees something very suspicious, if he sees in plain sight through the front window of your house that, there's a robber in there holding you captive, a police officer can then go into your home without a warrant. If he needs to search your home because you're a suspect in a murder mystery, then he needs to have a warrant that is issued by a judge. And this warrant basically says, okay, because of the evidence you presented to me, I think that you really should go check out this guy's home and see if he's guilty of this crime, or at least suspicious of this crime. Go ahead, Nina.
If someone goes in without a warrant,
the information that they find, even if they find, so that's a very good question. There's a court case called Matt versus Ohio. And in Matt versus Ohio, the police enter into a person's home, their last name was Matt, enters into Matt's home, and they find an entire trunk of child pornography, right? And they find all of this. But because they went in without a warrant, it's inadmissible in court. That evidence can't be used in court because they found it unlawfully. They entered the home unlawfully and searched without a warrant.
can they be sued or something? Or
The police?
Yeah, or something
For doing that, for not having a warrant to enter into someone's home. Because breaking and entering for anybody else is a major crime. Yes, a police officer needs a warrant to enter your home, unless you invite them in. But even if you invite them in to come in and talk, if they start going through drawers and looking at things that aren't in plain sight, then they can get in trouble for that. Anna?
Because I feel like, isn't there a rule where if you get arrested and the police don't recite your Miranda rights or something?
Yeah, exactly, because then if they arrest you without their Miranda rights, they can almost be set go. They can be let go every time. Fifth Amendment. Have you ever heard the expression plead the fifth? I plead the fifth, right? Meaning I don't want to say anything because I might get in trouble. Pleading the fifth is referring to the Fifth Amendment. The government can't force you to testify against yourself in court. The government cannot force you to testify against yourself in court. So if they're asking you where were you? Or pretty much it just prevents the government from forcing you to incriminate yourself. The Sixth Amendment, you have the right to a fair and speedy trial. Because typically, if you're held in jail because you can't make bond, meaning the money that you need to pay in order to get out of jail, which is a whole debate as well, you have the right to a fair and speedy trial. You shouldn't have to wait around in jail for years and years and years to go to trial. You have the right to a fair and speedy trial. You should be able to go to trial quickly, and it should be fair. You have the right to a trial by jury, meaning that the people that are deciding whether you're innocent or guilty, those people are made up by a jury of your peers. Meaning, you're not sitting down and there aren't 10 congressmen deciding what happens to you, or, or 13 congressmen deciding what happens to you. It's a jury made up of your peers. So if you get arrested in Philadelphia, you go to court, it's going to be a random sampling of people from Philadelphia that represent the entire population of Philadelphia. Make sense? U.S. citizens are protected from cruel and unusual punishment. The government cannot abuse you in any way. We see a lot of this going on today. We see that this amendment being debated today with police brutality. Amendment number 9, the United States may have the rights that are not listed in the Constitution. So basically, this one is kind of saying, remember we mentioned this earlier, so if you are in the United States and you are a citizen, you have rights beyond what is just listed in the Constitution. You have rights beyond what is listed in the Constitution, so it kind of makes it, again, a little bit more flexible. And the 10th Amendment, powers not given to the government by the United States Constitution belong to the state or its people. Everybody, just in your book, write that Amendment 10. Amendment 10 is known as the reserved powers. Because the powers not listed in the Constitution are reserved for the states. All right, so powers that are not listed in the Constitution, powers that are not delegated or listed in the Constitution to the federal government are reserved for the states, which is why elections, licenses, all that stuff is handled by the state.
For amendment number 9, are those like specific rights, or could someone just be like, oh, that's my right?
Basically, it's rights. It's rights that are not listed in the Constitution, but that are reserved for the people. So meaning, like, it's just like personal rights. You can't say, like, because you're not allowed to kill anyone. That's against the law, right? So you can't say, that's my right as a human being. It's not. Those are specific rights that are just kind of held by us that aren't really listed. Trying to think of an example. It kind of just like, Amendment number 9 kind of just coincides with Amendment 10. This further limits Congress and gives more power to the people. And then this one again limits Congress and gives power to the people. The Bill of Rights. If you're thinking about anti-federalists and federalists, who do you think wanted this really badly? Federalists and anti-federalists, who do you think really, really fought for a Bill of Rights? The anti-federalists, right? Because they were afraid of the national government having too much power. The anti-federalists said, we are not signing that document into law until there's a Bill of Rights that give us rights as individuals. And they said, okay, fine, fair, we'll do that then. Make sense? Okay, how much time do we have left? It's 8:51.
4 minutes.
4 minutes? All right, we can look at this. Amendment number 1 is the protection of your free expression. You're allowed to say what you want. You are allowed to protest. You are allowed to write articles in the newspaper to express your opinion. You have the right to express yourself. That is secured by Amendment 1. Amendment 1 also secures your personal beliefs, meaning that you have the right to practice whatever religion that you want in the United States. You have the freedom of religion. Darn it, we never went over Marbury versus Madison. We already did this. I'm not doing this again. Nope. All right. Marbury versus Madison, this establishes the precedent of judicial review. Judicial review is pretty much just the Supreme Court's power to declare a law unconstitutional. The power to declare a law unconstitutional. And girls, this is considered a judicial check against Congress, against the legislative branch. All right, so this is, do you remember checks and balances? Checks and balances are ways that the three branches can block each other's powers. Checks and balances is the system where each branch of government can block another branch's power or action to make sure that they're not becoming too powerful. And judicial review is the power to declare a law unconstitutional, and this is the judicial check against the legislative branch. Any questions about that? You guys watched that video, Marbury versus Madison, if you want to watch it again. I don't care, I really don't care about the specifics about who wanted to become a Supreme Court justice, who got their letter late. I don't care about that because that's the story. I want you to know what it establishes. Because we know that with this case with Marbury versus Madison, a couple Supreme Court justices were being signed into office, and they were called the midnight judges because they were being assigned super late because the presidency was being handed over to a new president, and the former president wanted to fill the Supreme Court with as many people as he could, because obviously they want people in the Supreme Court to rule the way that they will. And what happened here is that the midnight judges, some of them got their letters and the other ones didn't get them in time, but they argued, I should be allowed to be on the Supreme Court, and ultimately this created judicial review because this is the power to declare a law unconstitutional, and this is a power that is for the judicial branch, and it checks the legislative branch. Right? A similar check that you can compare this to, or just another check that you can compare this to in checks and balances would be like the veto, where the president can veto a bill by Congress. It's one of those situations. That make sense? Mina?
So does the judicial branch, they can do this?
The judicial branch practices the power to declare a law unconstitutional.
So the president, could it?
The president cannot exercise judicial review. No, those are in it. The president cannot exercise judicial review. It is a power held by the judicial branch. Okay. Awesome. And this was decided from Marbury versus Madison. Okay. All right, yeah, so you're gonna have a quiz on Wednesday. And honestly, it's gonna be pretty, I don't even think it's gonna take us the whole period. At this point, it's not gonna take you longer than that, but study your notes. I'm gonna post stuff for you to do tomorrow to make sure that we're reminding ourselves of the information that we need to know, like the articles, did you guys look at checks and balances? You did a little bit, right? All right, because we're gonna look at them again, but if you want, I would reread some of the stuff in here. This book is your bread and butter, right? So if you have trouble with a certain concept, that can be found in here, in the pages that we've read. All right, girls.